The events unfold in a highly developed world of advanced technology. One day, in the middle of this world, teleports to so-called dungeons began to appear. Ordinary miners used these portals and extracted valuable ores. Each dungeon contains a large amount of resources. In addition to useful items, the caves also harbored many threats in the form of monsters, so players emerged to confront them. Players are responsible for destroying enemies inside the dungeon. But our hero was just a miner, descending into the dungeon for minerals after clearing the caves of monsters. Jiang Mingyu was exhausted by the work, but the salary was quite good. Additionally, a pleasant bonus was that physical activity contributed to the growth of muscle mass. While the main character was working, a friend came up to him from behind and hit the guy because he did not respond to his name. Jiang Mingyu complained about why Old Man Fan had beaten him right away and asked why he had come here since it was already hot in the dungeon. In fact, the comrade did not come of his own free will, but only to give the main character his salary. The guy immediately took the money from Fan and was very pleased. A friend hinted that Jiang Mingyu could treat him to a drink after work, but he declined. Fan realized that our hero was still saving up for the Awakening Stone and said that the guy should forget about his dream because it was too expensive and dangerous. The husband said that his nephew also screamed about his desire to become a player, and then his parents spent all their money on the Awakening Stone, but in the end the boy got scared when he saw the dungeon. The Awakening Stone was the core of each dungeon, and also the key to joining the players, who were divided into 3 classes: warriors, scouts, and mages. Since the dungeons were owned by guilds, it was difficult for ordinary people to access the Awakening Stone, so even low-ranking people were highly valued. Jiang Mingyun noted that he still hasn't had the opportunity to live off his parents. His sister was about to enter university, and his aunt was having a hard time coping with everyday expenses. This guy hoped to become at least a low-ranking player to ease his aunt's burden. Suddenly, a stranger approached the friends and laughed at the protagonist's dream. This pompous guy ridiculed the fact that the little ant dreamed of turning into a phoenix and flying to the top. Jiang Mingyun was furious at the ridicule. An Old Man Fan tried to calm the boy down because the stranger was a member of the Shangjin Guild. The protagonist asked what was wrong with his aspirations. The guild member explained that a miner would have to mine or for years to afford an Awakening Stone. When they started telling him what to do, the guy began to tremble with anger. The rich man advised the protagonist to stop dreaming and face reality. Old Man Fan was scared because he didn't want their team's client to start a fight with the miner. The guild member glared at his friends so fiercely that for a second, a very tense atmosphere filled the air around him. In the end, the rich man decided to restrain himself and became upset that he couldn't have fun. He ordered the miners to get to work because the guild had hired them precisely to keep them from standing around doing nothing and chatting. Old Man Feng finally calmed down and was glad that Jiang Mingyun was able to restrain himself. When the Awakening Stone fell, the man explained that this pompous guy was called Zhang Miao. He was a spoil major, but a real B-rank player. The core then cracked, and Old Fan continued, saying that if the protagonist had attacked first, the guild member might well have killed the guy in self-defense. The comrade suggested that the protagonist ignore the words of the unpleasant Zhang Miao, because young people, as a rule, have ambitions. Jiang Mingyun reassured himself that he was okay when a small pebble fell on his head. After some time, a real rain of K-particles fell on the guy. Then Old Fan realized that things were bad, and the dungeon began to collapse. A scream echoed through the cave, announcing a terrible tragedy. The miners rushed to the gates in panic as rocks fell on them, and the wounded screamed for help. Old Feng grabbed the stunned Jiang Mingyun to rescue him from the rubble. Then Jiang Mingyun noticed that the number of exits from the mine began to decrease. He suspected that something had happened to the Awakening Stone, otherwise the gate would not have disappeared. One of his comrades tried to persuade our hero to escape. Suddenly, a huge stone fell from the ceiling onto the old wasteland. Jiang Mingyun, seeing the unfortunate fate of his friend, let out a furious scream that echoed throughout the cave. The man suffered serious injuries, causing purple blood to flow from under the boulder. The shocked guy hoped that his comrade was still alive and there was hope for his salvation. Under the hail of stones, Jiang Mingyun struggled to move the stone. Barely alive, Fan asked the guy to leave him here. He told Jiang Mingyun to run to the gate. Otherwise, he would not have time to get out of the cave. The protagonist, crying, tried to save his friend and promised to buy him a drink. Suddenly, a calm Zhang Miao appeared nearby, only mocking the miner's helplessness. Jiang Mingyun immediately recognized the pompous guy he had just been talking to. Our hero begged the player to save his friend, because a fighter must have superpowers. The major recoiled from the minor and declared that he had no intention of helping an ordinary ant. He calmly entered the portal, saying that the miners simply needed to accept their fate. The protagonist was angry that for Zhang Miao, ordinary people were just ants. The major confirmed that he really thought that about the miner and raised his hand in the air. A small ball of energy formed near his finger. A powerful stream of energy hit our hero and knocked him off his feet. The player threw Jiang Mingyun a long distance to show how wide the gap is between the upper class and the common people. The tortured and bleeding protagonist realized that he could not win the fight for his life. Zhang Miao believed that death in such a pit was a fitting punishment for a poor miner. Jiang Mingyun looked at the portal, which was getting smaller with each passing second, but he couldn't believe that it would end this way. The events then moved to the guy's house, where his sister is worried that he still hasn't returned home. The aunt didn't like that the girl called the main character her brother and assured her that he was fine. Meanwhile, some pressing events were discussed in the news. The presenter talked about how an underground cave-in occurred in the city today. The woman said that the dungeon belonged to the Shangjin Guild, and a Chuan's team was working there at the time of the tragedy. The girl was shocked because the news reported that many members of her brother's team were killed or seriously injured. She immediately turned to her mother because she was very worried about Jiang Mingyun. The girl called her to the TV so that she could see everything with her own eyes. The woman could not understand what had shocked and frightened her daughter so much. The girl pointed to the screen and said that something bad had happened to her brother. The news anchor noted that, according to the latest data, 5 people from the team were killed, 18 were injured, and 2 are listed as missing. The mother and daughter burst into tears upon hearing such terrible news. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door of the house, and they immediately rushed to meet the guest. A beaten Jiang Mingyun stood in the doorway, apologizing for losing his keys. Of course, for his relatives, this was nothing. The main thing was that the guy was alive. The main character was glad that he was able to return to his family. The events take place in the past, at the moment when Jiang Mingyun was in a locked cave. The man experienced severe pain throughout his body and was unable to move. It looks like the main character had broken ribs. Besides, he had lost too much blood. Jiang Mingyun felt his consciousness gradually fading and his eyes began to darken. The main character never thought that he would die in such a place. Memories of his aunt, who often scolded her nephew for leaving dirty clothes scattered around the house, flashed through his mind. He also remembered a memory of his sister, from whom he once stole a moose cake, which made her very angry. At that moment, the guy realized that he had an incredible thirst for life. Jiang Mingyun screamed because he didn't want to die in this dark, cold cave. The cracked, awakening stone rolled toward his hand. Upon touching the protagonist, the stone began to shine brightly and radiate its energy outward. The guy didn't understand why everything suddenly caught fire like that. He immediately received a message about the activation of the Abyss system. The system warned that the user was on the verge of death and had 30 seconds left, so it offered the guy to become the Lord of the Abyss. Overwhelmed by the hardships of life, Jiang Mingyun was incredibly surprised when he read this message. Although the timer counting down the last seconds of our hero's life was almost running out, he continued to think that this was just a funny joke. In the end, Jiang Mingyun agreed to become the Lord of the Abyss because it could save his life. This guy didn't care what he became because he wanted to survive at any cost. The system congratulated the protagonist on achieving the status of Lord of the Abyss. A bright light surrounded him, and he felt a surge of strength necessary for survival. The events unfold on the following morning, when the protagonist, having slept well after a hard night of fighting for survival, is finally able to sleep. Without getting out of bed, Jiang Mingyun decided to study the void system she had received. This guy was interested in what this technology was. All he remembered was that after the golden light appeared, he found himself in front of the door of his own house. At first, Jiang Mingyun thought it was magic, but then he realized that it was unlikely that anyone could walk freely at night and use teleportation magic. Then the guy realized that the interface that opened in front of him looked like the menu of an online game. The distribution of attribute points is quite clear and can be done in the same way as in the game. The distribution of points at the beginning of the game corresponds to one of the classes, namely warrior, scout, or mage. Having noticed the possibility of distributing his own characteristics, the guy realized that he had become a full-fledged player. The first task from the system was to earn hobby points, but our hero didn't understand what that was. At that moment, the sister quietly entered the room and cleared her throat to attract attention. Jiang Mingyun noticed that his wounds had healed very quickly and guessed that it was due to the awakening of the system. The sister couldn't stand it any longer. She screamed in irritation and asked when this guy would finally get out of bed. The protagonist asked her to knock on the door when she entered the boy's room. The The girl mockingly remarked that she did not know that her brother was doing his dirty deeds in his room and invited him to breakfast because it was already late. Jiang Mingyun asked if his sister had seen the panel about the void system. She didn't see it, so she thought that the guy hit himself yesterday. The sister realized that Jiang Mingyun was fine and could do everything himself. In addition, the girl asked her brother not to engage in such dangerous work in the future. She planned to take out student loans and attend part-time school to pay for college. Jiang Mingyun was happy because he thought Taozi was very worried about him. The girl, a little embarrassed, confirmed the protagonist's assumptions. She joked that when our heroine dies, no one will make money from her waste. This guy said that his sister is a demon and not kind at all. Taozi heard a knock on the door and knew that her friends had already arrived, so she told her brother to go downstairs and eat. They continued to knock on the door persistently, so the girl asked the guests to wait a minute. She thought that there were friends standing outside the door, so she immediately asked why they had come so early. From the girl's astonished reaction, one could tell that there were strangers standing there. Taozi wanted to quickly close the door, but someone's foot prevented her from doing so. The man said with a sinister smile that the girl had nothing to fear. She continued to look at the strangers with incredible fear in her eyes. The suspicious men tried to reassure her that they weren't bad guys. The events moved to the street where the boy was playing ball. He pointed his finger at the strangers and called his mother, but she told her son not to say anything unnecessary and quickly brought him inside. One of them approached Taojia and asked if Bai Xianyong was her father. He showed the girl a receipt from her father, who owed these men money. 3 years ago, Taozi's father borrowed $500,000 from the company, but today, taking into account interest, he already owes $3.5 million. The agreement stated that in any case, his debt would be repaid by his children. Taozi believed that his father had gotten into debt himself, so he had to pay it off himself, and the family was just a victim. The stranger pretended to feel sorry for the debtor's daughter. The husband realized that the gambler had abandoned his wife and child and run away, but according to the agreement, the family was supposed to pay the debt, so he grabbed Taoji by the hand. He hinted that their company was not a charity, so if they didn't get the money, they would give the girl the opportunity to earn it herself. The stranger tried to take poor Taoji away, but she clung to him and screamed. Suddenly, he hit the defenseless girl in the face and ordered her to be silent. The man's partner was tired of waiting for so long and wanted to drag Taozi to her by force. The elder ordered not to touch the girl's face, because without it she would not be able to earn money. Having intimidated the debtor's daughter, the bandits suggested that she quietly follow them to avoid suffering. Finally, the protagonist came to the threshold to save his sister. The guy came out of the bath with foam in his hair and asked what those bastards wanted to do with the girl. The sudden appearance of their victim's brother surprised the strangers. In the end, they laughed and called Jiang Mingyun a strangler. The main character jumped up from his seat and ran towards the man. One of the bandits thought that this guy had watched movies and imagined himself as the main character. Suddenly, Jiang Mingyun struck that big guy with incredible force. The girl and the other man were surprised by this turn of events. The big guy didn't like our hero's determination, so he decided not to tolerate such antics. He simply held the hand of the girl's savior, and the guy was in pain. In the end, the man continued to squeeze Jiang Mingyun, causing the protagonist to become unable to bear it any longer. Jiang Mingyun then realized that the balance of power was not in his favor and proposed resolving the conflict without violence. But this guy's opponent was no longer able to be stopped, and he hit our hero in the stomach. The blow was so strong that a drop of blood flew out of Jiang Mingyun's mouth. Taozi begged the bandits not to touch her brother. The main character assured that everything was fine with him. The elderly man mockingly remarked that everyone in this family was a loser. This strong young man's name was Lao Huang, and he was an underground fighter, so it was not so easy to knock him out. The bandits decided not to waste time to avoid running into the police, so they grabbed Taozi by the hair. Jiang Mingyun shouted at them to let go of his innocent sister. The men had no intention of doing this and stated that in order to save the girl, the protagonist must collect enough money to buy her freedom. Then this guy decided to take radical action and ordered the Abyss system to distribute all available points in favor of strength. After distributing the points according to the required indicators, Jiang Mingyun ordered the men to stand in the same places, which surprised them quite a bit. The guy saw that they were not following his orders and sarcastically asked if the bandits understood human language. The protagonist repeated that he was demanding the release of his sister. Lao Huang then became interested in the courage he believed Jiang Mingyun had shown after losing. He roughly threw Taoji to the floor. Bandy realized he had to break a couple of bones to make him give in. The older man warned his partner not to get too carried away and kill the man like last time. Lao Huang invited our hero to come closer for a fight. Sister began to worry about Jiang Mingyun. The protagonist did not wait and rushed towards his opponent with determination. Now the events returned to Jiang Mingyun's childhood. His sister cried a lot again because someone hurt her again. Our hero once again protected the girl from militants. One of the hooligans shot little Jiang Mingyun in the nose with all his might. Our hero responded decisively to this blow with a stick. A group of hooligans were frightened when they saw how the boy treated their friend. It turned out that Jiang Mingyun accidentally killed his opponent. The main character was furious and, breathing heavily after the fight, looked at the other boys. He called them stupid bandits and warned that if they insulted Taoji again, he would kill them all. The children thought that our hero was a psychopath, so they got scared and ran away from him. The sister came up and took her brave savior by the hand. She saw the blood on Jiang Mingyun's face and thought that he was probably in pain. The guy laughed and assured that he was very strong and did not feel pain. These memories were very similar to the current situation, when Jiang Mingyun was once again protecting his now-grown sister from robbers. Lao Huang noted that the protagonist had a strong fighting spirit. But still, for such a giant, this guy's blows were like a massage. Such stupid ridicule made Jiang Mingyun even more angry. Finally, he broke through Lao Huang's defense and was able to get close to his face. As a result, the professional fighter received a strong blow from what previously seemed like a complete loser. Taozi and Lao Huang's partner was shocked by this unexpected turn of events. The large man quickly fell to the ground and was unable to do anything against such a powerful attack. Everyone around couldn't understand where such an inconspicuous guy got so much strength from. Jiang Mingyun was also surprised that only 20 points could give him such strength. The elderly man couldn't believe that his friend could be knocked out with just one punch. He guessed that the main character was the player and thought that his previous behavior was just a game. At this moment, the void system notified Jiang Mingyun that he had gained 10 all points. The guy wondered what this could mean. He believed that the name had a literal meaning, so he only wanted those around him to feel awe towards him. Something distracted the protagonist from the meaning of the abyss system. The surviving bandit attempted to escape unnoticed while Jiang Mingyun was distracted. The guy screamed in rage at the bastard to stop. As the man tried to hide, he offered him a blow for 30 points of strength. The bandit begged Jiang Mingyun to wait and not beat him. Suddenly, he fell on his knees before our hero. He bowed to the man and begged him to spare him. The protagonist asked with disgust if this man really had no gangster pride. The bandit explained that they were debt collectors and were just doing their job. He explained that until the debt was paid, even if the person defeated the collector, someone else would come along to continue collecting the debt. Jiang Mingyun admitted that this man was right, so this problem must be solved in order to live peacefully. The man asked who the debt collectors worked for and where their office was located. The bandit said the office was in the Huigong shopping center, and the boss's name was Meng Fei. He was about to dodge, but Jiang Mingyun stopped him and asked if he was the one who had squeezed Taozi's hand just a few moments ago. The husband trembled and lied that it all happened completely by accident. He apologized with tears in his eyes and assured that he was wrong and understood all his mistakes. Despite all the pleas, the protagonist decided to show cruelty towards his sister's offender and as a result received 10 admiration points. Sometime after the massacre of the bandits, Jiang Mingyun, sitting on the bed, thought that the awe points serve as experience in the abyss system and help to advance to the next level. But the main character noticed that when he leveled up, he was given only 2 measly character points. Then the guy realized that he had been too hasty in distributing all the points towards strength because he wanted to be a well-rounded fighter. Having analyzed the situation and having come to the conclusion that the level of intelligence was sufficient, he decided to distribute the free points into dexterity. Finally, our hero decided to see what reward he had received for his game and saw something incredible there. As a result, he obtained the skill Loser's Aura, which caused Jiang Mingyun's presence value to decrease, and everyone began to think of him as weak. The protagonist didn't like these new skills at all, so he now considered the system stupid because it gave him false hope. Meanwhile, Taoji told her brother that she was going to the library with her friends. The guy asked her to be careful and return home as soon as possible. Now, the main character decided to take care of his urgent matters. The events will move to the Huigong shopping center, where the collector's office is located. It seemed like the boss was scolding his subordinates over the events involving Jiang Mingyun. The manager was unhappy that they not only failed to collect the debt, but also got the boy out of this situation. The boss ordered me to tell everything quickly and in detail. The collector with a broken arm said that his partner, Juan, initially beat up the seemingly weak young man, but then he got to his feet and suddenly became much stronger. After a fight with a professional fighter, Jiang Mingyun broke his arm. The boss couldn't believe that Huang Shixiao, who had been performing in the arena for many years, was able to knock out some short guy with one punch. The collector was sure that their opponent was only pretending to be weak, but was in fact a real player. The manager was surprised to hear such assumptions about this guy. He asked his employee Jay if it was really possible that this young man was a real player. Jay replied that he would be able to confirm this once he engaged in combat with the guy. But for what he had heard, he had come to the conclusion that the young man might be a recently awakened player. Another employee joined the conversation and said that some guy came to the boss and wanted to talk about the Bai family's debts. The boss was surprised by such an unexpected visit. Meng Fei couldn't believe that our hero dared to come to his office, so he ordered him to be brought there as quickly as possible. He was unhappy that the debt collectors not only failed to collect the debt, but also brought their pursuers with them. The boss said he would punish his employees later, but for now, they should disappear from his sight. Another of Meng Fei's subordinates reported that he had brought Jiang Mingyun with him. The boss and Jay looked at the main character with curiosity. The guy said hello and asked with some hesitation who this boss named Meng Fei was. The chief explained that it was he and asked if the young man had really defeated his people. The protagonist sincerely apologized for giving in to emotion and beating up the two older men that afternoon, and expressed his hope that Boss Feng would not take it to heart. Meng Fei thought that this guy was fooling around again. He mentally noted that the main character looked very much like a suffocated person. The boss smiled and pretended to forget about the unpleasant situation with his employees. He believed that his people had simply done a poor job, and he knew that the man had come to him for more than just an apology. Jiang Mingyun explained that he came here because of the Bai family's debt and wanted the boss to give him time to pay it off. Meng Fei noted that this would be difficult to implement, but agreed to the agreement on one condition. The protagonist was delighted by the boss's kindness and asked what the conditions would be. Jay started smiling when his boss mentioned the disease. Meng Fei was willing to extend the debt repayment period if he defeated his employee. Jiang Mingyun felt that this method was not effective enough and wanted to use a less cruel method. The boss asked him a question because our hero used language that called for a reduction in the level of violence. Meng Fei remembered that he had beaten up the employees, and now he had to pay him back for it. Moreover, Jiang Mingyun had no choice. Otherwise, he would have to bring the money right now. The protagonist clenched his fists and noted that he understood everything. He asked again whether the debt repayment period would really be extended after defeating the assistant chief. Meng Fei laughed and confirmed his intentions. If this guy could defeat Jay, then they would continue talking. The boss warned Jiang Mingyun that Jay was a real womanizer. Meng Fei's co-worker noted that our hero had a penetrating gaze, but he still considered Jiang Mingyun a failure, and yet he rushed into battle. The guy immediately realized that his opponent was very fast, so he decided to block his attack. Suddenly, Jay appeared behind the protagonist and sarcastically asked where he was looking. Jiang Mingyun didn't notice such a lightning-fast maneuver and didn't understand how the enemy managed to get around him from behind. Jay ended up landing a precise kick to the guy's face. Our hero didn't have time to react to such incredible speed, so he lost his balance and flew to the side. He realized that he had been defeated in a fight with a speed-type player. Jay, without waiting, continued to strike at lightning speed and asked the guy not to be distracted from the fight. The enemy mockingly asked if the protagonist really couldn't resist his speed and suggested fighting more slowly to give the hero a head start. But Jay eventually decided not to stop and continued beating Jiang Mingyun until he lost consciousness. Meanwhile, Meng Fei thought that this guy was really very weak, but he didn't understand why he was able to defeat Lao Huang. The fighter couldn't believe that such a weakling could knock out Huang with one punch, and noted that at this rate, Jiang Mingyun would not see an extension to the debt repayment period. In the end, he was still inclined to think that this guy was a newbie who had recently received his abilities. The protagonist realized that it was a bad sign that people were starting to guess about his abilities. From the frightened expression on his opponent's face, Jay realized that his guess was correct. Being an experienced player, he decided to teach Jiang Mingyun a lesson. The fighter advised that the enemy should not know about your true strength and continue the fight. The protagonist shouted boldly and gathered all his strength to fight his opponent. He smiled and thought about using the bottle of water he had brought with him. Jiang Mingyun waved his hand and threw the bottle towards Jay. The fighter didn't realize what was flying towards him and grabbed the object out of the air. Looking at the object in his hand, he realized it was just a bottle of water. Jay thought the guy was so desperate that he thought a bottle could help. Suddenly, water rushed into his face. Everything around was shrouded in smoke, and the bloody Jay could not understand what had happened. Jiang Mingyun was satisfied with his plan and laughed softly. Meng Fei couldn't believe that this guy was a magician and was able to tear off the bottle with fire magic. Jay noticed that his hand was burned from the explosion and he was now completely incapacitated. This angered the fighter, and he was ready to kill the main character. Boss Fei couldn't understand how the protagonist managed to become so agile so quickly. Of course, he warned his comrade to be careful, but it was no use warning him, because Jiang Mingyun's sword flew out from behind the smoke and landed right in Jay's face. In the end, the protagonist's opponent managed to dodge the blow that could have been his last. Having suffered serious injuries, Jay could barely break and stop. The fighter asked the boy what class he belonged to. Jiang Mingyun remembered that a few seconds ago, the senior player had given advice that he shouldn't tell anyone about his true skills. Jay was irritated by the protagonist's simple tricks and the fact that they managed to defeat him. The guy used a water bottle again in the fight, and his opponent was already prepared for this development. The broken bottle rolled to Man Fei's feet, and he picked it up. The man noticed that there was something inside, namely metal. At that moment, he realized that Jiang Mingyun had deceived them and was not actually a magician. Meanwhile, an enraged Jay decided to demonstrate his ability to move instantly. Our hero realized that the enemy was using this technique a second time to get behind him again. This resulted in more water bottles falling on Jay, which could have exploded him, which he did not like at all. Jiang Mingyun squatted down and covered his ears to avoid being hit by the explosions, and at that moment his opponent was consumed by fire. Jay was trying to recover from such a sudden and powerful attack, and the protagonist also decided to teach him a lesson. That guy advised never to underestimate your opponent, no matter how weak he may seem. After Jiang Mingyun's final blow, his opponent lay unconscious on the floor. At that moment, the Abyss system notified the guy that he had received 40 admiration points and had moved to the 3rd level. Meng Fei was shocked that one of his best fighters was defeated by this short guy. Jiang Mingyun called his boss, but was stunned by the fight he saw and Jay's defeat. The protagonist asked with a smile on his lips if he was qualified enough. An ominous aura flared around him, and he invited Fairy to sit down and talk about extending the debt repayment period. The defeated Jay continued to lie on the floor unconscious. Meng Fei silently took a step towards the protagonist. In conclusion, he broke the silence with applause and praised Jiang Mingyun for his brilliant victory. The boss admitted that this battle was lost on his side, but the show looked great. Such praise embarrassed our hero, so he explained that he was simply a little luckier than his opponent. Meng Fei noted that this guy should not be ashamed of his achievements. He said he noticed a trick Jiang Mingyun used against his employee. The boss wanted to know more details about this trick. Meng Fei asked our hero what metal was inside the bottle and how they were able to explode. Jiang Mingyun explained that it was ordinary metallic sodium. The husband was surprised to hear the name of a chemical element unfamiliar to him. The protagonist noted that every schoolchild knows that sodium reacts violently and explodes upon contact with water. On his way to the office, he bought 6 bottles of water at the nearest store. Meng Fei remarked that he didn't understand how the guy put metal into the bottle when he threw it, meaning he should have added sodium beforehand, but the reaction happened instantly. The young man explained that for safety reasons, it was enough to pour out some of the water. He then secured the metal to the lid with double-sided tape, thereby preventing the reaction. Despite the lack of reagents, this was still enough to catch the enemy off guard and disorient them. After such detailed explanations, Meng Fei understood everything. However, he still asked where the guy got the metallic sodium, since it was practically impossible to buy in the store, but Jiang Mingyun felt that too many questions had already been asked. The protagonist noticed that the boss seemed to have memory problems, as his office was located in the chemical market. Then Meng Fei realized that the young man was not stupid and had planned everything from the very beginning. The man noted that this young man really helped him broaden his horizons. Jiang Mingyun was the kind of person who could truly surprise the boss. It became clear at first that the protagonist initially acted like a weakling and was passive in battle in order to make the enemy lose his vigilance. In his thoughts, the guy assumed that in fact this did not happen on purpose, but was simply a consequence of the action of the skills, aura of a loser. Meng Fei was convinced that if Jay had not fallen for the young man's tricks, he would have won thanks to his fighting skills. The man came to the conclusion that this man only looked like he had come for peace negotiations, but in fact he was fully prepared for a fight. Jiang Mingyun really wanted to resolve things peacefully and without violence. But the young man was not so naive as to come to the office empty-handed, without any preparation, knowing that he would not be allowed in after being beaten by tax collectors. Boss Fei was irritated that Jiang Mingyun was so smart and cunning at such a young age. Eventually, the boss admitted that our hero was very smart, So Meng Fei wanted to see how far the young man could advance in the world of players. This guy decided to remind him that it was about debt from the very beginning. The boss sat down on the chair and assured that he always keeps his word. As a result, Meng Fei proposed extending the debt repayment period. It seems that this man's conditions did not suit our hero. He shouted at the whole office. This guy was outraged and couldn't understand how he was going to find $3.5 million in 3 days. Jiang Mingyun shouts irritated the boss because his ears were blocked. He didn't want to make any concessions because the young man was a player and could earn it after a few trips to the dungeons. The protagonist explained that his awakening had only recently occurred, and he had not yet passed the exam required to become a player, let alone join any guild. Meng Fei was confident that it was definitely not his problem and told the young man that there would be a player evaluation on Monday, which was a good opportunity. He placed his business card in front of Jiang Mingyun and asked him to contact him when the debtor received enough money. In addition, Boss Man's company collected information, so he was ready to help the protagonist if necessary. Meng Fei finally let go of the young man and watched him as he jumped out his office window. The collector asked if the boss would really let this guy get away so easily. But the boss was confident that Jiang Mingyun would hand over the money on time, because this man had seen incredible things in a short period of time. Finally, the protagonist returned home and told his family about it. His aunt gently asked him to wash his hands and start eating. Taozi said that today, when her mother was not at home, debt collectors came to them, but Jiang Mingyun drove them away. The woman was furious with her husband by Xian Yong and assured our hero that he should not worry about it, and that she would find the money to pay off the debt herself. The man noted that the amount was quite large, so the agency was unlikely to leave the family alone if the debt was not repaid. Upon hearing the figure of $3.5 million, the daughter and mother were incredibly shocked. Jiang Mingyun reassured them, saying that he had already spoken with the collectors and that thanks to his status as a player, he would quickly earn the money. The aunt rejected the guy's offer and slammed her hand on the table. She absolutely did not want to let her nephew become a gambler. The woman said that the main character's parents disappeared after they became players. The man was surprised to hear this story. He had previously been told that his mother and father had died in a car accident. Jiang Mingyun looked questioningly at his aunt, who still hadn't said a word. In the end, the woman noted with a sigh that the guy had such an uncontrollable character since childhood. She said that the boy's parents were actually gamblers, and this happened 20 years ago when Jiang Mingyun was only 1 year old. They came to their aunt and asked her to look after the child while they went on a long journey. Even then, the woman understood that the authorities had chosen them to participate in a large-scale operation. The parents left and did not return until a year later, when the state inspectorate for actors came to the aunt's house and informed them of their disappearance. All this time, the woman didn't want to talk about it, because she was afraid that Jiang Mingyun would not follow his parents' example. The aunt begged the protagonist not to become a player and promised to resolve the financial issue herself. Eventually, it was deep night, and our hero finally went to rest. He slept poorly, so he was constantly tossing and turning. Finally, Jiang Mingyun couldn't bear it any longer and jumped out of bed, screaming because he couldn't sleep at all. The boy couldn't believe that his parents were football players, and he knew that his aunt would have kept it a secret if he hadn't wanted to join them. According to the woman, after their disappearance, she contacted the authorities, but was unable to find out anything. Even the guild left no trace, as if it had never existed. Jiang Mingyun wanted to know what happened to his parents during the raid, why they had gone into hiding for 20 years, and suspected that they might have died. The protagonist remembered all the ridicule and insults he heard addressed to him as an orphan. He tried to get rid of obsessive thoughts about his difficult childhood. The guy, exhausted, fell onto the bed and wondered what to do next. He suddenly remembered the business card Meng Fei had given him. The boss's phone was on the bedside table when he received the call. He picked up the phone and asked who was on the other end of the line. Jiang Mingyun apologized for disturbing Meng Fei and explained that it was he who called. The young man remembered that Mina's company was collecting information, so he asked to look for information about 2 players who had gone missing 20 years ago. The boss explained that it would cost 200,000 yuan, but if nothing was found, they would return half. Jiang Mingyun and Meng Fei agreed and ended the conversation. Our hero is tired because everything comes down to money again. He apologized to his aunt for not listening to her this time, because he had finally decided to become a womanizer. Meanwhile, in an unfamiliar room, the boss called out to another of his employees. His subordinate didn't like that his boss called so late because he wanted to sleep. The boss raised his voice and reminded employee in Manjun that the quarterly evaluation of new players would begin very soon. He ordered him to open his eyes wide and be sure to find the player, otherwise he would bury in Manhwa underground. This guy assured that this time he would hire someone strong. Event had been rescheduled for Monday morning at the player center. There were many people there who sold high-ranking magic crystals and established relationships with each other. The protagonist noted that there were more people at the inspection than at any fair. Jiang Mingyun looked around and thought that he needed to find someone who knew where the new player registration center was. He approached the nearest man and asked where the office was. It turned out that it was Manhwa himself who was looking for new players for his boss. It seems he wanted to somehow insult our hero. Jiang Mingyun was frightened and already thought that he had chosen the wrong person to ask for directions. Suddenly, Manhwa patted Jiang Mingyun on the shoulder and said that he was a genius, which made our hero completely confused. In fact, the stranger said that he was dressed simply today, so he thought that no one would notice his beauty, and thus noted the genius of the protagonist. Jiang Mingyun remembered that he had asked about the registration department for new players. Then his interlocutor realized that the main character came here because he was new and wanted to get a grade. He explained that new players were registered at the side entrance, while existing members were checked on the other side. He recommended that Jiang Mingyun find a staff member to fill out the registration form. The main character thanked the handsome man and ran in the right direction. And Manhwa wished him good luck and expressed confidence that our hero would definitely become a player. The handsome man thought that Jiang Mingyun looked rather weak, so he decided that only losers had gathered here this time. At that moment, an unfamiliar car quickly drove up to him. Zhang Miao, whom the protagonist had met in a rather unpleasant way, got out of the car and asked Manhwa if he was the deputy head of the Huben Guild. It seems that this vain magician had a strained relationship with the handsome man, because they were constantly making sarcastic jokes at each other. Zhang Miao pointed out that Manhwa needed to take care of his guild, which would soon collapse, and suggested that he go to Shangjin to see him. This guy didn't think the Major's Guild was all that good, because it had a scumbag like Zhang Miao in it. Suddenly, someone approached them and ordered them to stop, and the boys felt the pressure of the S-rank player. The man noted that they are public figures, and if they start fighting, they will be disgraced. It was Shui Hongshe, the Wind and Thunder Guildmaster, an S-rank warrior, and he pointed out that everyone around them wanted to see talented people in their guild, so there was definitely no need to fight for them. Meanwhile, Jiang Mingyun successfully registered, received the title of warrior and his number badge, which he needed to pin on his chest. The employee asked him to go through the door, after which he would be taken to the testing site. The guy stood in front of the last door, feeling slightly nervous. Jiang Mingyun clenched his fists and prepared to enter the real world of players. Suddenly, the Abyss system sent a new message to the protagonist. She informed us that the guy hadn't received any luck points for a long time, so the system had to apply a random penalty, which consisted of deducting 50 luck points from our hero. The main character was extremely dissatisfied with this stupid system. The organizers, using loudspeakers, announced the imminent start of the evaluation of newcomers and called everyone to enter the arena. Jiang Mingyun realized that he was late and tried to calm down, because now he could only hope for the best. As he entered the arena, the boy thought that even if his luck had decreased by 50 points, he still didn't know by how much, so maybe it wasn't such a terrible loss. Fear has big eyes, so maybe the situation wasn't critical. Our hero walked confidently into the arena, but it seemed the punishment had begun to take effect, and he clumsily tripped over a stone. In addition, during the acceleration, Jiang Mingyun hit his forehead on a rock. The other players looked at the poor guy and asked if he was okay. The guy assured that everything was fine and thought that the decision to distribute 20 points in favor of strong players was not bad. Otherwise, he would be the weakest player in history. But he still realized that his situation was much worse than he had previously thought. One of the players said that the certification would start soon, so the main character needed to get up quickly. The strangers began to discuss who might be the chief examiner, and hoped that it would not be He Li. Jiang Mingyun interrupted their conversation, and the boys immediately turned their attention to him. Our hero asked who He Li was and why there might be problems with her. One of the players was surprised that the guy came to the interview knowing almost nothing, but agreed to explain everything. There were 3 senior S-rank mage examiners in the city's player center, and the first of them was the silent wizard Mo Wen. The second examiner was the healer Huang Lin. The last one was a charming queen named He Li, and the examiners carried out the assessment by distributing the work among themselves in the morning, at lunchtime, and in the evening. Although this is a test for the players, it is just a job, so the first 2 examiners do everything without any tricks, but with He Li, it was completely different. As it turned out, this examiner was a pervert. Jiang Mingyun was embarrassed by what he heard, because he thought the woman was beating people with a whip, and his interlocutors saw the strange excitement of this guy. The players confirmed the young man's suspicions, but the most disgusting thing was that the woman was very strict, so the assessment with her could be called real torture. Typically, with 50 participants, examiners eliminate 10 people in each round. But in He-Lee's case, only 10 people make it through the round itself. The second player said that the main character shouldn't worry because this person also had He-Lee in the previous season. At that moment, Jiang Mingyun realized that this was his end, and the player thought he was stupid because the probability of meeting a sadist was the same as last year. But with the protagonist's current luck, they won't get He-Lee unless the guy is cursed. The first question concerned the start time of the assessment, as the senior examiner had not yet arrived. The other players also noticed that the evaluation took 10 minutes and were outraged. The employee became nervous due to the participants' indignation and asked them to wait a little before starting. Finally, a charming woman approached, touched by the fact that the actors were waiting for her so impatiently. Have Lee land on the roof of the stadium and then jump down to his players to begin the evaluation process. All the people below noticed the shadow in the sky and wondered what it was. The examiner landed with such force that pieces of earth flew in all directions. The players had to defend themselves with their hands, otherwise stones would be thrown in their faces. Pieces of earth also flew at the assistant, but she didn't pretend. Meanwhile, Hailey emerged from the smoke and ash and greeted her players, the players. The woman, holding a whip in her hands, asked if they were ready to teach her with love. Jiang Mingyun's partner didn't understand why he had made such a mistake that he received a high grade in the assessment for the second time. The protagonist was embarrassed because his friend was not guilty of anything, since the only fault lay with the guy himself. Another partner of Jiang Mingyun was confident that Hailey had nothing to fear because in any situation, a player must give his all to the cause. It turned out that his nose was already bleeding because of the examiner's beauty, and this explained his mood and desire to give it his all. Events are being moved to the third assembly hall of the center building. Zhang Miao sat there and talked about how this poor group was doomed along with Hailey. And Monrong noted that participant number 1 had a pleasant aura, and only then did the major notice that his enemy was in the same room with him. Participant number 1 was named Tokugawa. He was from the city of Takshan. He studied Japanese Bushido since childhood. His strength was assessed by rank, so an active struggle for his strength broke out in the hall. Zhang Miao was tired of empty talk and suggested a bet. The major had a 2-kilogram spirit stone worth 200,000 yuan, which he was supposed to give to the number 1 player for passing the assessment. If the player failed the assessment, the gem would go to Mongjun. If the handsome man loses, he will have to bark like a dog. The guild members entered into an agreement among themselves, while the protagonist prepared for certification. Let me explain the rules of the test, which was that the examiner had to continuously attack the players for 30 minutes using magic. Players were given the choice of dodging, defending, healing, or attacking, and had to beat the time limit to advance to the next round. If a player loses consciousness or leaves the arena, he is considered eliminated from the game. Meanwhile, the assistant put on high-tech glasses that helped conduct the tests. The girl instantly activated her spatial perception. The arena around her began to transform in an amazing way. The players watched the changes happening around them with surprise and interest. Jiang Mingyun noted that he felt something pass through him, but his partner explained that it was just a spell used to track the movements of the players present in the arena and save them in case of emergency. Finally, He-Lee was prepared and ready to start the first round. The woman directed a stream of her powerful magic straight into the sky. Some people watching the arena from afar thought it was a grand fireworks display. Number 42 warned Jiang Mingyun to prepare for battle and remember to dodge. Numerous streams of the examiner's magic began to fall from the sky onto the arena, and immediately caught up with their first victims. Player number 38 decided to use the quick-step technique to dodge attacks faster. He was glad because this task came to him with ease. Meanwhile, someone else, using nature magic, summoned a stone wall using an earthworking technique. The building suddenly appeared right next to house number 38, and he was a little scared. It turned out that it was Jiang Mingyun's partner, and the other player was unhappy with him for using magic instead of being a tank. Player number 42 noted that you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, as he turned 30 this year and became a magician, and he also invited other players to hide behind his wall to beat the first round. Meanwhile, the main character, running away from the explosions, thanked his comrade for his help. Jiang Mingyun noticed that the strength indicator not only strengthened attacks, but also increased the power of the dash. All he had to do was concentrate his energy in his leg and apply force. Eventually, the guy managed to move to the right place. At that moment, he was warned by a cry that a stream of magic was flying behind him. The concentrated energy hit Jiang Mingyun's back with such force that the poor guy even clicked his teeth. Everyone hoped that he wouldn't die from a direct hit. They saw that our hero was alive, but for some reason he was crying. In the end, Jiang Mingyun found himself behind the stone, and even then he understood all the suffering and difficulties of the elders. He realized that this was not just a test, but a real battlefield. The sphere continued to rotate above the arena, releasing magical fireworks in different directions. Jiang Mingyun asked his comrades if they should create a tool to evaluate players. This guy imagined that there must be a special magical sphere that distributes ranks among people. Number 42 thought that the main character had reread the manga and was a fan of it. Jiang Mingyun refuted his comrades' assumptions and noted that with the help of a certain device, the assessment would be much easier and faster. One man wanted to ask our hero a specific question about player classes. The game featured warriors, rangers, and mages, and for each of them, it was necessary to select a main characteristic to evaluate the strength of each individual player. This guy couldn't understand. He thought that the level of the awakening stone was determined by its rank. In paragraph 38, it was noted that such an assessment is rather superficial, and the test demonstrates real combat capabilities. Another player agreed that they could really show off their fighting skills. They believed that the awakening stone was more of a tool and equipment, and the higher its quality, the better the weapon. Therefore, if a beginner cannot find the monster's weak points or even hit it, he will not be able to deal damage corresponding to the stone's level. Or the player may not be able to position himself properly and get a good view of the environment. Even with the best protective equipment, sooner or later he may die in the dungeon, the conditions of which change randomly. Due to all these factors, players are judged by their combat abilities and survival skills, as these two qualities determine the true strength of a player. Number 42 explained that if the assessment was done using crystals, most people would pass it and become nothing more than cannon fodder. And that was when Jiang Mingyun understood the meaning of these tests. The man noted that every country takes a responsible approach to evaluating players, but Li was too strict. Representative number 38 noted that now was not the time to discuss this, as it seemed their protective rock was beginning to crumble. The 30-year-old magician noted that the last time he used this spell, he easily passed the first round. He assured that he was a master of protective spells, and number 38 decided to look outside and see what was happening behind the stone. The man asked the magician if he was 100% sure that the stone could withstand such a powerful fire force. Number 42 ensured that there was no cause for concern and suggested that this guy had never been to the Highly trials. He wanted to say that such firepower was quite normal, but he was surprised to see what was happening behind the stone wall. Dozens of bright magical rays rushed towards our heroes. A hail of shells rained down on the rock, and no one could understand where such a powerful fire came from. The assistant informed Li that she had directed a third of the power toward the 12 o'clock position and asked hesitantly if the examiner was allowed to do that. Suddenly, the woman replied that she had nothing to do with it. She never once controlled the direction of the fireballs. They flew there on their own, as if something were pulling them. Headquarters number 38 also did not understand why such firepower was directed against them and considered it abnormal. Number 42 noticed that bullets were flying at them, as if they were the main monsters, and thought that one of his comrades had insulted the examiner. While the partners were arguing, the main culprit was convinced that all this was happening precisely because of him, and he understood that the stupid system would not let him go so easily. Eventually, the hail of bullets damaged the stone, and it began to crumble. The protagonist and his comrades looked at the possible defeat with horror. Eventually, they realized that they had to flee quickly, otherwise they would be stoned. Jiang Mingyun grabbed his stunned comrade to save him from death. He asked if number 38 was okay, because if it had been longer the player would not have been saved. 38th's head was bleeding from a broken one, so he asked Jiang Mingyun not to help him anymore, because even the stones would do less harm to him. He reminded that the security had not passed through, so they should not stand still and needed to run away quickly. The boys returned after hearing the noise from their friend, and he asked irritably why they continued to stand. Only then did Jiang Mingyun realize what kind of trouble they urgently needed to escape from. Number 38 thought it was just because he was staring at the examiner's chest. The protagonist plucked up his courage and admitted to his comrades that all the bullets were flying at him. The partner asked what this guy had done and why he was now receiving such a punishment. Jiang Mingyun didn't have time to explain the situation, so he decided to take the bullets from his comrades himself. Player number 42 said there was still about 10 minutes left and asked if the guy was planning on running away from the balls the whole time. The boy confirmed his intentions and asked the magician to strengthen him, because Jiang Mingyun's speed was good, but his bone flexibility was not enough. The comrade agreed to help our hero, but warned that the effect would be short-lived. Using his wand, number 42 used enhancement magic. He applied a comprehensive attribute enhancement to Jiang Mingyun. The protagonist instantly concentrated his energy in his legs and prepared to run away from the bullets. He asked everyone to disperse and performed a powerful jump. Jiang Mingyun received a message from the system that he could send magic balls to others and thereby earn all points. This guy thought it was still an easy way to gain admiration points, reduce the number of balls in the arena, and eliminate some participants. He didn't know what the second test would be like, but according to his comrade, only 10 people would pass the first one. So, eliminating the rest of the players would improve Jiang Mingyun's situation. But our hero understood that by using such dirty tricks, he would not be able to become a real player. Meanwhile, girl number 48's magical abilities were already on the verge of exhaustion, so her shield would not last long. Suddenly, she noticed that a projectile was flying behind her, unlike the others. It looked thicker and longer, so the girl suspected something was wrong. Player number 48 knew that if that ball hit him, it would definitely be the end of his career. Jiang Mingyun, who was fleeing from the attack, pushed her away to run further. He rushed in front of the girl at incredible speed. Number 48 asked why the guy was running so fast and almost knocked her down. Before the girl could finish speaking, she noticed that Jiang Mingyun had taken the projectile from her and was helping her. Further around the arena, shouts could be heard about the guy running recklessly and doing incomprehensible stupid things. Number 6 noticed that the main character had distracted all the magic balls. The 11th girl couldn't sense Jiang Mingyun's mana and didn't understand why this guy was trying to help all the players when he could instantly be eliminated from the evaluation test. The sorceress invited all participants to support her savior. She noted that they cannot rely on the weakest player to pass the test. All the participants agreed with the girl because they could not just look at their savior and not help in any way. One of the mages used increased magic resistance and magic defense. Another participant used magic to increase his initial level of dexterity. Jiang Mingyun noticed that all of his stats had increased because someone had used magic to do so. This guy couldn't understand why the system gave him 10 admiration points even though he didn't deflect bullets onto others. It turned out that the points were awarded because the participants were carried away by his actions, and he thought that the punishment was not so severe. The protagonist decided that to enhance the effect he needed to attract even more balls. Jiang Mingyun gained dozens of all points and quickly increased his level, while player 1 was killing people in cold blood. The killer ignored the screams of his victims and explained to the participants who noticed his crime that he only cut off people's arms and legs, but did not kill them. From the players' expressions, he concluded that they were completely unprepared for the assessment, since the second test was precisely about knocking out as many participants as possible and getting points for it. One player noted that even if you need to knock people out of the competition, you can simply knock them unconscious or remove them from the arena without ruining their lives. Number 1 believed that the world did not need so many players and weaklings, and that they were just stepping stones on the path of this cold-blooded killer. He decided that this interlocutor would become his 7th victim. Suddenly, Number 1 delivered a deft blow to the participant. He had 3 more players to eliminate, and this guy was wondering who his next victim would be. Number 3 fell into the hot hand of the killer, and the guy begged the first one not to touch him, wanting to surrender himself. The first one said that no additional trouble was required. The player emotionlessly cut 3 numbers in half. The next victim was a frightened girl who begged the guy not to kill her. Contestant number 1 had already mastered the technique and couldn't stop, so he took a swing at the hapless contestant. Suddenly, one of the players called out to the bastard, distracting him from a girl. Before number 1 could even see this brave man, the protagonist dealt him a strong blow to the face, and he quickly flew to the side. The killer was angry that someone dared to attack him from behind, and he also noticed that the attacker had no magical abilities. Jiang Mingyun couldn't believe that such a bastard could talk about a fair fight, and noted that his blow was just a prelude. The main dish of the first issue, in the form of all these magic balls, was already on its way, but the killer did not understand what was being said. The main character spoke about heaven's punishment for these scumbags. Only then did number 1 notice that dozens of magical projectiles were flying towards him. Eventually the bullets hit their target, and the vile killer found himself in the epicenter of the fiery jets. Everyone around them didn't understand whether Jiang Mingyun had actually redirected all the magic balls in someone's direction. The players realized that participant number 1 was eliminating others and cutting off their arms and legs, and the main character was trying to stop him. Jiang Mingyun's ally hoped that with such firepower, the cunning player could be knocked out of the competition. The protagonist was a bit suspicious because he wasn't given any admiration points, so he thought that character number 1 didn't feel any emotions at all. Then the guy realized that the player probably couldn't be hurt. And indeed, number 1 was conscious and wanted to counterattack our hero. the guy was saved by the fact that the assistant told him that the time was up and the test was completed. As a result, Jiang Mingyun was able to dodge the enemy's attack. The sword blade stopped right in front of the protagonist's neck. Number 1 noted that the guy was very lucky, but promised to turn Jiang Mingyun into mincemeat in the next round. The main character wanted to get rid of this trash, but now it has become his main goal. However, he achieved some success and received 16 stat points for leveling up, but he realized that his opponent was very agile, and our hero had no combat skills at all. One of his comrades advised Jiang Mingyun to give up because being targeted by a B-rank fighter was no fun at all. The protagonist understood this perfectly well, but he had reasons not to retreat. The magician noted that this guy was very stubborn and weak among all, but had a flexible mind. The husband believed that it was fate that brought them together here, so he decided to give his friend a skill stone containing starting skills for each of the classes. Jiang Mingyun only needed to hold the crystal in his hands and feel it in his heart to obtain the skill required for his class. Suddenly, a message came from the system indicating that our hero had obtained all 3 skills for 3 classes, but the person who just a few seconds ago said that this was impossible. It turned out that there were no class restrictions in the void system, so Jiang Mingyun could learn any ability. The message stated that the boy had managed to master the skill Golden Body Defense, but was unable to learn Explosive Ball and Absolute Accuracy due to a lack of intelligence and dexterity points. He was happy because he hadn't yet distributed the free stat points and could quickly fix the situation. In the end, the skill redistribution system worked as Jiang Mingyun requested, and the boy was finally able to master new skills, so now he was confident that he would defeat his enemy. Meanwhile, Hailey explained the rules of the second round, according to which players had to knock each other out of the game and get 1 point for it. To get a B rank, 10 points are required, to get a C rank, 7, to get a D rank, 3, and to get an E rank, 0, but the main requirement was that no one had to die. Meanwhile, Number 1 could not come to an agreement and called the protagonist. He challenged him to the battlefield so that he could finally come to terms with his fate. Other players consider the player number 1 to be a vile scumbag who made his name at the expense of weak players. Everyone around the girl, saved by Jiang Mingyun, thought that the guy shouldn't have gone against the psychopath and given up the exam for his own safety. Our hero sarcastically asked if someone had fastened the chain poorly, to which the dog ran and broke it. Jiang Mingyun called his enemy a purebred dog, which made him very angry. The players were surprised because the guy wasn't scared and still went out to fight the enraged B-rank fighter. The protagonist asked dog number 1 to behave well because it was disturbing the other participants with its barking. His comrades thought he was seeking death because he continued to provoke and were down the already enraged player. Number 1 was glad that Jiang Mingyun didn't give up because otherwise he would have to look for the same weakling in the next stage. Before the scoundrel could finish speaking, a bright magic ball flew into his face, according to him, from a complete loser. The protagonist was delighted with such precision, but the effect of absolute accuracy, unfortunately, only worked once. This unexpected move made number 1 incredibly angry. He rushed towards Jiang Mingyun to finally kill this overly brave guy. Our hero was just waiting for this and immediately used the spell Double Explosive Ball. The magic projectiles instantly flew towards number 1. In point number 38, it was noted that this guy launches explosive balls like a machine gun, so he has every chance of winning. One comrade said that it is impossible to make plans in advance, because the question is whether the shells will be able to cope with a physically prepared enemy. If you look closely, you can see that player number 1 has dodged all the attacks except the first surprise attack and continues to approach Jiang Mingyun. Meanwhile, the fighter felt confident and considered this guy a fool. He was irritated that the protagonist was able to resist him using pathetic tricks. Jiang Mingyun continuously fired balls from his left hand to stop the number 1 player's advance. The projectiles were released from the right hand only after some time, but were aimed directly at the enemy. But number 1 still thought that Jiang Mingyun was the stupidest person he had ever met because he was blocking his view by raising dust with his gunshots. Player number 1 could easily determine the location of our hero by the direction of the balls. The player had already come close enough and was preparing to strike Jiang Mingyun. He swung his katana confidently, but ended up sending the blow into nothing. Suddenly, the main character appeared from the other side and asked who he wanted to kill there. Jiang Mingyun noted that his capabilities should not be underestimated and shot number 1 straight in the face. This was the second time this guy had dealt a crushing blow to his enemy. The blow sent the player spinning upside down, but he eventually gathered his strength and was able to get back on his feet. The former was angry because his lack of magical ability prevented him from tracking down the protagonist, and he realized that Jiang Mingyun's shots were just a distraction. The player considered this a mean act, because now, due to the burns, his right eye stopped functioning. The protagonist didn't expect that using skills would be so tedious, but everything went according to plan. Jiang Mingyun prepared for the decisive blow. He shared with his adversary the wisdom that the best hunter often finds himself in the form of his prey. Seeing Jiang Mingyun's posture, number 38 became suspicious. The protagonist plucked up his courage and entered into close combat. Number 1 admitted that he had greatly underestimated the guy, but he believed that a mere magician would not be able to engage him in close combat. The player was ready to strike Jiang Mingyun with his eyes closed. Without saying a word, our hero, without wasting any time, rushed straight at the enemy's face with all his strength. After all, this guy had used golden body defense and wanted to finish off his attack by using absolute precision and explosive fist at full power. Gathering his last strength, Jiang Mingyun took the final step in implementing his plan. He stood and waited to see the results of his skills and abilities. Eventually, number 1 remained conscious, so he was able to clear his throat and take a shot in our hero's direction. The guy's friend was shocked that his opponent did not lose consciousness after such a strong blow. Trash was unhappy because Jiang Mingyun flirted with him again and again. He angrily shouted at the protagonist to come to him and asked what the young man expected to gain by delivering such a weak blow. Meanwhile, the assistant announced that player 1 had dropped out of the game, so the winner had already been chosen. He thought that the warden was completely blind because he was still standing, and therefore the girl had no right to lower his marks. Jiang Mingyun noted with a smile that the only person with vision problems was the person number 1. The young man added that his opponent was still stupid because he didn't notice where his foot was. Then number 1 finally looked down and saw what was outside the arena. This guy's friend also noticed that the player had crossed the border. Number 48 was surprised to learn how Jiang Mingyun decided to defeat his opponent. Then fighter number 1 realized that his opponent had damaged his right eye, disrupted his perception of the world around him, took him as far as possible to the edge of the arena, and knocked him out with one punch. Jiang Mingyun asked if his opponent now understood the reason for his defeat, which was that he had angered him from the very beginning and then finished the fight with one blow. He bid farewell to his opponent, calling him a stepping stone to advancement, and advised him to think before acting next time. 42 was incredibly happy for his young comrade and couldn't believe that he was still capable of winning. All the players who watched this battle admired the victory of the main character, although it was not entirely fair. At the same time, Manhwa, who was sitting in the hall, was also glad that number 1 had been defeated because now the spiritual crystal belonged to him. He thought it would be a bit presumptuous of him, but Zhang Miao still had a lot of money, so it shouldn't be a problem for him. The major was very annoyed and ordered the boy to take his reward and hide from his sight. Zhang Miao was angry at himself for recommending Tokugawa to his leader, but what bothered him most was that player number 50 seemed very familiar to him, and he eventually realized that he had seen this guy a few days ago in the dungeon. Meanwhile, Jiang Mingyun felt incredible pleasure, receiving dozens of admiration points for his successful battle. Eventually, he was able to reach the 10th level of the Abyss system and realized that his efforts to appear like a saint in front of the crowd were not in vain. Besides, the guy received a bonus for his promotion and hoped that it would be something better than the weakling aura. The comrades watched as Jiang Mingyun bowed before the system so that it could no longer bully him, and thought that it was a rather strange victory pose. After his little ritual, the protagonist ordered the system to receive the reward. He eventually gained the skill Spiritual Shock, which allowed the player to release a void aura once every 24 hours and frighten one target, but the effect only lasted for 2 seconds. Jiang Mingyun didn't like it at all, but it was still better than the passive skill, and he thought about bowing a few times next time. Maybe something else would appear then. Number 1 was furious that our hero was acting like a real winner. Tokugawa, with trembling hands, noticed that this guy was only helped by his own dirty tricks. Finally, the madman could not bear it any longer and rushed to attack his sworn enemy. The examiner realized that this development of events was not at all in her favor. The comrade tried to warn Jiang Mingyun that the enemy was attacking him from behind. Tokugawa wanted to see what his opponent was really like. Jiang Mingyun calmly remarked that he was much better than this vile scum. He decided to use the spiritual shock skill he had mastered a few minutes ago. Number 1 couldn't understand how the loser could experience S-level pressure if he didn't have any magical abilities at all. The protagonist remembered that Tokugawa simply cut off the arms and legs of other players. Jiang Mingyun grabbed his opponent's hand so that he could feel the pain that his victims were experiencing. He grabbed the fighter's wrist tightly and cast the explosive ball spell. Tokugawa screamed desperately, feeling a piercing pain, and he wanted to kill the protagonist even more. The guy ordered him to shut up and stepped on the gas to kick him. From such brutal beatings at the foot of number 1, blood began to flow from the mouth. Finally, Tokugawa flew away at incredible speed, abandoning his weapons. Jiang Mingyun sarcastically asked what had happened to his opponent, that he couldn't even hold a sword in his hands. He rushed to catch up with his opponent because he had no intention of finishing the counterattack. The guy asked how he would do what he loved without a sword, namely, causing harm to people without reason. With his second kick, Jiang Mingyun broke Tokugawa's arm. The protagonist calmly ordered this bastard to kneel. Suddenly, Tokugawa's piercing cry echoed throughout the arena. All of Jiang Mingyun's comrades were shocked and frightened by his cruel act. This guy realized that the killer screamed exactly the same as his victims. The protagonist noticed that Tokugawa clearly hoped to kill him by stabbing him in the back, while the system awarded the player 100 admiration points. Jiang Mingyun cast a spell and finally decided to put an end to this vile scum. He had already rushed forward, preparing for the decisive blow, but someone asked him to stop. Let Lee stop his hand with a whip, and keep in mind that this blow will definitely be fatal for Tokugawa, and Jiang Mingyun may be in serious trouble after this. The protagonist looked at the woman with anger in his eyes and asked if she was really threatening him. The examiner noted that this place is under her jurisdiction, so she is the one who sets the rules here. Moreover, the threat was not Lee, but the Tokugawa family. This scumbag's family is a powerful group that spans all of Japan's business and political circles, so they will definitely avenge this guy's death. Jiang Mingyun thanked the woman for her concern, but thought that letting Tokugawa go would only make his problems worse. The expert noted that in this case, at least the whole family will hunt for this person. The comrades were dissatisfied and considered this a mockery of Jiang Mingyun. The other players then realized that this scoundrel was only so impudent because of his origin, because now even Lee was protecting him. Jiang Mingyun realized that spiritual shock was now on cooldown, so he wouldn't be able to kill Tokugawa in front of the examiner. Eventually, the guy admitted that the woman was right, and his emotions got the better of him, so he told Lee that he wasn't going to fight her. The examiner then asked the team to enter one number and offered to continue the assessment. Jiang Mingyun was grateful to Lee for helping him prevent some pretty serious problems and admitted that he was still quite weak for this world. If this guy gets stronger, even Tokugawa's dogs won't be able to stop him. The second round finally ended, and the players were asked to leave the arena and go to the office to obtain a gaming license. Jiang Mingyun was happy with his first license, even though it was an E-rank license, because it still allowed him to join a guild and start earning big money. In 2 rounds, he received a lot of admiration points, especially from Tokugawa, who scored more than 200 points at a time. The protagonist's level had increased to 12, and he still had 12 unallocated stat points, but he decided to save them for her, just in case. Jiang Mingyun admitted that his fighting skills were at the C-rank level, and he was only able to defeat Tokugawa because he was lucky and the opponent underestimated his true strength. He understood that such scumbags would not abandon those who stood in their way. But our hero had already revealed all his trump cards, so at the next meeting, Tokugawa will be able to plan the murder of his enemy. Furthermore, Jiang Mingyun must not forget that he receives punishment when he does not gain reverence points. The guy thought that the guild recruitment would start next week, so he didn't understand where he could get all points when someone put a hand on his shoulder and asked why he was bored. It was number 42. His name was Qian Shan, which indicates that he too was only a D rank. Another comrade noted that they all got their driver's licenses, so that's worth noting. Jiang Mingyun immediately warned that he couldn't afford entertainment that cost more than 5 yuan, but his friend said that he could even make money from it. Meanwhile, Tokugawa had already come to his senses in his bed. His servant asked whether the owner should be notified of what had happened in the arena. The guy threw a pillow at his subordinate in frustration and called him a fool. It was obvious that no one needed to know that Tokugawa had tarnished the family's honor by losing to the weakest player. He calmed down a little and asked his assistant how long it would take for his body to recover. The subordinate said that, according to the healer's prognosis, the treatment would last a week if carried out daily. Tokugawa wanted to mobilize several ninja from Urong, so he ordered his assistant to find one within a week. He wanted to know where Jiang Mingyun came from and all the details of his life. Meanwhile, the main character wanted to ask his new friend something. He couldn't understand how they were going to celebrate in the wilderness. The comrade pointed out that there was nothing wrong with dreams and asked if Jiang Mingyun really thought he had been called to do something like that. Qian Shan asked if our hero knew anything about the wild dungeons. The young man had no idea what he was talking about. In fact, some low-level dungeons were not under the control of the authorities due to the small number of spirit crystals, and therefore all players could form teams and enter them. The total value of the spirit crystals in such dungeons range from 20,000 to 50,000 yuan. So Qianshan once called one of his friends to lead a team, and they went to such caves every 2 days for a week. A comrade asked if Jiang Mingyun wanted to earn some extra money before the guild recruitment started. The main character was just thinking about where he could earn admiration points, and here he could earn some money. Some shadow from behind a tree noticed that it was time to earn money. An unfamiliar girl came out from there and noticed that she had been waiting for a group of friends for a long time. She gave a guy with gray hair a good D grade, but didn't sense any magical aura from the main character. The stranger warned that there was no joking around in their team, because after the raid, all resources were distributed according to the contribution, so if someone was idle, they would receive nothing. Then, a confident Jiang Mingyun asked if he would get more money if he contributed more. The events then moved to the players' center at head office. Let Li come in and ask why the guild council decided to hold an emergency meeting this morning. The teacher immediately noted that she had done well on the test. His name was Sui Jinan, and this man explained that cult organizations have been looting recently. There have been several attacks on players across the country, so a large-scale investigation was needed, and in addition, the Shangjin Guild dungeon collapsed last week, and the investigation into this matter was still ongoing and had not yet begun. Let Li listen to his boss and first suggest that he look at Jiang Mingyun's profile. Sui Jinan, seeing that he was only an E-rank player, thought that because of the woman's strictness towards newcomers, he had already caused some problems. Instead, the expert asked the man to watch the fight again on video, which she sent him by email. The leader assessed the fight, but then saw something that surprised him. At the beginning of the video, Jiang Mingyun used explosive balls, typical of magicians. Then this guy used golden body protection, which is of a completely different class. For Sui Jinan, it was quite an interesting spectacle, even, so to speak, a scam in the world of players. Let Li also noticed this deviation in the assessment, which puzzled her, and she asked whether it should be reported to management. The manager asked him to wait because the guy still had no strength left, and scammers from other countries would immediately start hunting him down upon learning of such peculiarities. The woman noted that Jiang Mingyun's identity would still be revealed immediately after joining the guild. Sui Jinan knew a suitable location for a special player, so he asked a subordinate to send someone from the video and with the skill stone to the Crazy Tiger Guild. Meanwhile, Jiang Mingyun's team and the black-haired girl continued to deal with the problem of the weak player. She finally introduced herself as Su Yuding, a B-rank warrior, and explained that this was a D-rank dungeon, so she would be the one leading the team. The girl asked to collect the personal data of the participants to develop a battle strategy, and started with Jiang Mingyun. She noted that the dungeon is not under government supervision, so someone might want to make money by following this team. The recording of the information was completed and the team headed into the dungeon. Then the main character realized that there was a monster's lair in this cave. At the entrance, our heroes were met by an armed group of D-rank goblins. Su Yuding informed the team that there were about 30 goblins here and gave the order to prepare for battle. Suddenly, someone rushed forward, and the commander asked what the man was thinking about. It was Jiang Mingyun who assured that the monsters would not be able to disturb the captain. The girl was angry that a new guy had just entered the dungeon and was no longer listening to her. The comrades looked at each other and realized that something needed to be done. They also decided to engage in battle because Jiang Mingyun would destroy all the monsters single-handedly. Qianshan already regretted bringing this guy here because he was very smart. The commander was irritated that the crew acted as if they had never seen money before. She couldn't stand it and asked that they leave her at least a little. It turned out to be the lair of a monster of the lowest level. Su Yuding only killed 3 goblins because she had nothing else to do. She gave the uneducated, undisciplined guys a good beating, especially the main character, but he didn't regret anything because he killed the most goblins, namely 15. Jiang Mingyun understood that the spiritual crystals in such places were of low quality, but by passing through them several times, one could collect a lot. The system offered the player to improve their skills for 40 kilograms of spiritual crystals. He knew that after upgrading both skills, the team would definitely notice the lack of crystals, so he decided to only upgrade loser's aura. Su Yuding ordered our hero to stop giggling with the stones in his hands because they needed to move on to the next log. The road became wider and there were more spiritual crystals, which meant that there must be another monster lair somewhere nearby. The blonde boy's eyes filled with tears at the amount of rocks around him. The guys were happy because now they would definitely get rich. The commander asked them not to run far and to beware of traps. Qianshan believed that there couldn't be any monsters here since, according to the information available, it was just a spirit stone mine, so he proposed to quickly eliminate the boss and split the money. Jiang Mingyu knew that this was absolutely not the case because he mined all year round and knew that such a quantity of crystals did not correspond to a D-rank dungeon. Suddenly, the main character heard some noise near the team. A crowd of spider-like monsters was approaching the players. Jiang Mingyu warned his team and ordered them to retreat as a large number of monsters were approaching the scene. It turned out that they had accidentally fallen into a nest of cave spiders. Qianshan noted that although the enemies were only D-rank, there were a lot of them. So he asked the commander how she planned to fight. There was no answer, so the man returned to call the captain again. The terrifying monsters were getting closer and closer to the team. The whole team had already called Su Yuding, but she didn't answer. The girl stood up and made some rather strange sounds. The boys thought she was playing a joke on them and noticed that the commander had chosen an inopportune time for this. Suddenly, Jiang Mingyun stopped his comrade and asked him not to approach Su Yuding. The protagonist couldn't explain it, but he felt that something was wrong with the captain. Suddenly, she assumed a fighting stance and reached for her weapon. The girl's appearance changed dramatically. The whites of her eyes turned black, her pupils turned red, and an unfriendly expression appeared on her face. The comrades did not understand what was happening, so they were very scared. Jiang Mingyun guessed that there was definitely something wrong with this dungeon and predicted that the situation would only get worse. At this moment, Su Yuding finally drew her blades and rushed towards her allies. The protagonist shouted to his comrades to retreat. The boy barely had time to dodge the commander's powerful attack. She didn't stop and continued to rapidly hit Jiang Mingyun, and he tried to talk to her. The girl then launched a kick that finally landed, but the guy managed to block it. Jiang Mingyun went down and noted that it was very painful. Su Yuding swung her hand to deliver the finishing blow, leaving our hero with no choice but to use the explosive ball. He struck the commander and ordered her to finally come to her senses. The girl easily parried the blow, and as a result, only a few small scratches remained on her arm. Jiang Mingyun almost ended this fight on his own, noticing that his opponent was acting too strangely and using a web behind her back. The blonde thought that Su Yuding wanted to kill them to get all the money. Qianshan rejected such assumptions, as the commander was well aware and believed that she had fallen under the influence of an illusion or something similar. The protagonist then realized that there was something wrong with the captain's fighting style, because she was using crude techniques, although even novice warriors do not forget to use their martial arts skills. Jiang Mingyun compared all the factors and understood what was happening to Su Yuding. The comrades did not know how to get rid of illusions, so they wanted to do it physically. The main character refuted their assumptions because she was controlled differently. He assumed that the commander was controlling one of the spiders. The guy explained this by the fact that, firstly, she made such obvious mistakes that even beginners don't make, and she simply focused on the important points, and secondly, there was a web behind the girl's back. Then the comrade realized that he only needed to break the connection with the spider, but Jiang Mingyun noted that it would hardly be easy because during their struggle, the web did not even move. In any case, the team had to come up with something because the spiders kept coming in numbers. The protagonist noticed that the monsters were afraid of fire, so he asked Qianshan to keep them at bay with magic, while the white-haired man had to fight the cave spiders. Jiang Mingyun was about to bring the captain back to his senses, so he rushed at her and used explosive bullets again. The guy skillfully and accurately fired several projectiles at Su Yuding, who was under his control. The girl tried to repel Jiang Mingyun's numerous fire attacks. In the end, the protagonist seized the moment and applied absolute precision. Su Yuding had her back turned, so she didn't have time to react to the magic projectile. The result was a loud explosion and thick dust rose around the commander. Qianshan asked if this guy had already settled the problem with the team leader. The comrades could no longer hold the line because there were too many spiders and they did not disappear. Jiang Mingyun thought he had succeeded because he shot her straight in the back. Eventually, the dust and smoke cleared, revealing that Su Yuding had still not regained consciousness. The guy felt a little ashamed because he accidentally tore the armor off the girl, so her fragile body was on display, but there was no time to admire it. Jiang Mingyun realized that long-range attacks were ineffective, so he decided to switch to close combat. He attacked the commander in preparation for the attack and apologized in advance for the damage caused. Our hero grabbed the web and, using magic, finally broke the connection with the spider. The web slowly burned away, and the boy believed that it was finally over and regretted that it was too dark in the cave and they could not see which spider did it. Jiang Mingyun wanted to deal with this monster because it posed a huge threat just by its control over people. Meanwhile, the commander woke up and did not understand what the main character wanted to do with her in such a strange position. The guy explained to her that he only wanted to save her, but Su Yuding was tense because her clothes were torn in the chest area. In addition, her back hurt, as if after a fight, so she demanded that the guy explain everything to her. Jiang Mingyun lied with delight that it was the spiders that had taken control of her that had done it, and other monsters began to attack the girl, but Su Yuding still didn't believe his words. The protagonist swore allegiance to Brother Qian because he really tried to save the team captain. The comrade was unhappy that his name was mentioned in such a context, and asked if Su Yuding had come to her senses. He asked the girl to get up and help them fight off the spider invasion, because they would not be able to hold out for long. The white-haired man was already surrounded by monsters on all sides, and asked his ally for fire support. He was upset because Qian Shan had gotten right into his hair, which he had taken such great care of for so long. The commander realized that the situation was critical, so she decided to drink the potion. She was unhappy that they almost lost to several D-rank spiders. Jiang Mingyun suggested that the girl take a rest because his support should be enough. Su Yuding didn't want to be left behind with such a minor injury and had already picked up his blade. She was confident in herself and wanted to show her true strength as a B-rank warrior. After one of the captain's attacks, a dozen spiders were instantly cut into pieces. Qian Shan noted that if the protagonist had admitted that he was the one who tore the girl's clothes, he would have suffered the same fate. The guy asked his friend to keep his voice down because he didn't want to become a target for a second time that day from a B-rank player. Meanwhile, Su Yuding used a martial skill provocation. She stood surrounded, but radiated incredible strength and courage as she fought the monsters. The commander then used the earth split technique and kicked the ground with all her might. The white-haired man admired Su Yuding's strength and remarked that the number of spiders no longer mattered as they posed no threat. The captain ordered the boys to stop watching from the sidelines and join the battle to finish off the smaller monsters and prepare for the boss fight. The comrades immediately began to carry out the commander's order. Su Yuding thought that the protagonist had lied to her after all, because cave spiders only knew how to scratch and bite, and they didn't use webs at all. These little spiders were unlikely to have such high skills, which means they were not the ones leading the captain. Jiang Mingyun then realized that the web extended from the top of the cave as well. The guy decided to point his palm towards the ceiling and use an explosive ball to illuminate everything around him. What we saw on the ceiling shocked our hero. From above, everything was covered in cobwebs, among which one could see cocoons and slime. Jiang Mingyun immediately warned his crew that the monster controlling the captain must be on the ceiling of the cave. The commander asked to light the top again so that she could see this monster. The protagonist fulfilled the request and launched the projectile into the atmosphere. Due to the large amount of web, Qian Shan could not see the main spider at all. Jiang Mingyun couldn't understand why nothing could be seen from above, because, according to his assumptions, the enemy should be right there. He remembered how the captain had been instantly taken under control as soon as they entered the dungeon. Suddenly, dust began to fall from the ceiling, and at that moment the guy realized that the enemy had been watching them from behind all this time. An incredibly huge spider crawled into our team. Jiang Mingyun shouted to Qian and warned him that the enemy was right behind him. Having heard the warning from that guy, the comrade returned and was shocked by what he saw. The spider didn't wait and pierced poor Qian Shan with its paw, not even giving him a chance to escape. The man screamed furiously from a serious shoulder injury. A huge spider, like something out of a nightmare, with a huge mouth full of terrible teeth, jumped out of the cloud of dust. The monster let out an incredibly terrifying scream and still held its first victim in its paw. The white-haired man was incredibly scared because this was definitely not a D-rank boss. At this moment, the spider finally pulled its sharp leg out of Qian Shan's body. The wounded man fell to the floor from quite a great height. The gray-haired man, watching this, trembled with fear and dropped the weapon from his hands. The frightened comrade believed that this was the end for them, because the monster's mana had already reached rank B, and they definitely wouldn't be able to defeat it. Jiang Mingyun was angry with himself, because after seeing so many spiritual stones, he didn't immediately realize that this dungeon was definitely not D-rank. Meanwhile, the Abyss system tasked our hero with killing a monster inhabited by B-rank spiders and receiving a large reward for completing it. This seemingly impossible mission shocked the protagonist, who only had an E rank. Meanwhile, Su Yuding ordered her allies to capture Qian Shan and flee from there. She asked them to go to the player center and invite them to help in this dungeon. Jiang Mingyun asked apprehensively what the commander would do at this moment. The girl noted that she's a B-rank warrior and the strongest in the team. She believed that it was the captain who led this raid who should have killed the main monster of this cave. Su Yuding didn't wait and, armed, boldly rushed into battle with the giant spider. The protagonist tried to bring his gray-haired comrade back to consciousness in order to pull him out and save Qian Shan. He was still in shock and claimed that the captain would not be able to defeat this powerful monster. Jiang Mingyun didn't understand what his comrade meant, because the commander was also a B rank. White-haired noted that this was a completely different matter, because killing such a monster required 2 V-rank players or a team with professional equipment. Meanwhile, the spider released a powerful stream of poison from its mouth. Su Yuting skillfully dodged her enemy's poisonous attacks. Gradually, she closed the distance to finally attack the monster. The girl had no idea that this creature attacks with poison and acid, which even corrodes stones. The spider noticed that Su Yuting had come too close and tried to attack her with its paws. For the commander, this was a very convenient moment for the first attack. The girl didn't wait and decided to quickly cut off one of the monster's legs. She abruptly rushed forward to strike with the dagger, but it did not penetrate the spider's body even a centimeter. His shell was too hard, so the weapon left only a small scratch. The spider attacked Su Yuting again, but she reacted instantly and jumped away from its paw. Jiang Mingyun warned the commander about the threat that came from outside. The spider's other leg was already moving towards the girl, preparing for a further attack. In the end, she gathered all her strength and hit Su Yuting straight on the head. As a result of such force, the girl, not having time to prepare for the unexpected attack, flew to the other end of the cave. The captain struck the wall of the dungeon with great force. Only then did she realize that the monster's defenses and strength far exceeded her own. A few seconds later, Su Yuting saw that the spider was already approaching her. The boss had already sped up to deliver the finishing blow to his opponent, and the girl could no longer do anything about it. Suddenly, the spider was attacked by numerous fireballs, preventing him from completing his attack. Jiang Mingyun boldly declared that he was rescuing the captain for the second time that day. Su Yuting instantly moved from her previous place. Suddenly, she called our hero a fool because he didn't leave with his comrades and decided to fight against the B-rank boss. The guy explained with a smile on his lips that he only became a player for the big money, and such a monster was very expensive, so Jiang Mingyun couldn't let the commander take the entire reward for himself. He asked Su Yuting how much money he could get from the B-class boss. The captain explained that such a monster could be used to craft B-rank armor and weapons, and could fetch around 1 million for it. Hearing about such a large sum, the protagonist had already imagined how much money he could earn, and Su Yuting was irritated that this guy only thought about profit and not about his own safety. The commander explained that this boss not only had a high level of defense, but also fairly fast attacks. She didn't understand what an E-rank mage could do to such a powerful monster. Su Yuting didn't understand why our hero took her hand, and thought that he had overlooked the fact that he had just climbed on top of her. In reality, Jiang Mingyun simply wanted to borrow her blade to at least try to avoid his own death, instead of just sitting and waiting for her. The protagonist ordered the system to distribute all remaining points into dexterity. The commander thought this guy was a crazy fool, because mages are supposed to support attacks from the rear. She believed that Jiang Mingyun was even willing to die for money. The guy was very lucky because the spider almost hit him, although his agility level was overstated, but our hero turned out to be exactly what he expected to see from a boss who cost 1 million. As a result, the monster still managed to touch the young man and leave a small scratch on his cheek. The protagonist understood that no matter how good the defense was, the boss still had a weak spot somewhere. Su Yuting, seeing how skillfully the boy dodged the attacks, couldn't believe that he was just an E-rank mage. Jiang Mingyun believed that the eyes were always a weak point, so he decided to launch a magic ball straight at the monster's face. A powerful and bright explosion occurred right before the spider's eyes. While the enemy was disoriented, the protagonist jumped up to strike with his blade. Su Yuting watched from the side and warned the boy to be careful. Then Jiang Mingyun looked to the side and realized what the commander had seen. The spider's paw almost reached the guy and dealt a fatal blow. The protagonist was sure that he was attacking the monster's eyes, so he shouldn't have seen them. Su Yuting called him a fool again because spiders have sense organs other than their eyes. She noted that the monster had as many as 8 legs. At this moment, the main character noticed that a blue liquid was flowing out of the spider's abdomen. Jiang Mingyun thought it was blood and that the monster had been injured while rescuing the captain. The guy remembered that he had improved the aura skill for losers, and now he had the ability to hide his presence for 3 seconds. Finally, he asked the commander to work a little harder. The girl asked if Jiang Mingyun had any plan, and he explained that Su Yuting was supposed to provoke the spider and distract it, and at that moment the boy would deal it a fatal blow. The commander was surprised by such a crazy plan, because she could only hold off the boss for a second, so she thought there was no point in it. The protagonist assured him that this time it would be enough for him, and asked Su Yuting to trust him. She clutched the dagger in her hand and agreed to believe him, because this guy had already saved her life in this cave. The commander launched an attack and asked Jiang Mingyun to use this opportunity wisely. At this moment, the protagonist ordered the system to hide his presence. Su Yuting stopped in front of the monster to use her martial arts skills. She used the taunt skill to disorient the spider. The captain announced that the moment had come for his final attack. The protagonist accelerated his advance and hoped that his plan would work after all. He was caught and ended up using a borrowed blade to rip open the giant spider's abdomen. As a result, Jiang Mingyun received 200 awe points and 2 attribute points, as well as the Ring of Void. It ended up in the guy's hands, and it turned out that the main function of this decoration is investigation of vision. Meanwhile, Su Yuting reported that, according to each participant contribution, Jiang Mingyun received 60%, the commander herself deserved 20%, and the gray-haired man and Qian Shan each received 10%. The boys agreed to these conditions because, if it weren't for the main character, the senior magician would no longer be alive. The commander clarified that the total cost of the dungeon should be 1 million and suggested that the team finally get out of here. Jiang Mingyun walked out of the portal and stepped onto ordinary land in the middle of the forest, not in the middle of that damn cave. He was glad of the fresh air and asked the captain to call him to the next dungeon. Now the events moved to the main character's house, where Taoji is talking to her mother. The girl said that Jiang Mingyun participated in the player evaluation today. The woman understood this perfectly well, but given the character of this man, she realized that it would not be possible to convince him, and besides, he was doing all this for the sake of his family. While they were talking, someone knocked on the front door of the house. Someone kept knocking loudly, and the aunt thought that her nephew had lost his keys again. She opened the door and saw a complete stranger standing in front of her. In front of her stood a stocky red-haired guy who was curious about Jiang Mingyun's presence at home. Meanwhile, the protagonist happily went home because he was able to buy gifts for his aunt and Taozi with the money he earned. The boy thought that his aunt would behave worse and finally stop arguing over his desire to become a womanizer. As he approached his house, he noticed that something rather strange was happening. The house was surrounded by people who looked very much like bandits, and the door was wide open. The guy with the eye patch was delighted by the long-awaited arrival of his target. Jiang Mingyun asked the strangers with a serious expression who they were and why they had come to his house. A bandit with strange eyes and a mask on his face ordered our hero to leave quickly, because their boss was already tired of waiting. The guy only now noticed the wide-open door and understood everything. The protagonist was worried because his relatives could be in danger. Then he rushed forward and immediately ran into the house. The mother and daughter sat, frightened by the red-haired leader of this gang. The aunt's face was completely covered with traces of beatings, and she begged this guy to run away from there. After seeing this photo, Jiang Mingyun didn't notice the gift he brought for his family. Jiang Mingyun was indescribably furious and asked how those scum dared to do this to his family. The gang leader, holding a glass of water, declared that there was no need for such unrest. The stranger explained that the young gentleman had called him specifically, so the bandit thought there would be a special target here, but he saw only a loser in front of him. Jiang Mingyun then realized that it was Tokugawa who had sent these people here. The protagonist noted that if complaints are received against him personally, then there is no need to touch his family. The bandit didn't answer and looked piercingly at the guy. In the end, he unceremoniously slapped Jiang Mingyun hard in the face. The guy with the eye patch noticed that our hero was not in a position to set his own terms. All the bandits began to beat the main character in turn. He was kicked hard in the stomach, causing him to bleed from the mouth. The hooligans did not stop and beat up poor Jiang Mingyun wherever they could. The aunt could not stand this abuse any longer, so she screamed and begged the strangers to stop beating her nephew. The chief hit the woman in the face again and told the old witch not to interfere in his affairs. Despite his own injuries, Jiang Mingyun ordered those scumbags to leave his family alone. Suddenly, the boss took the tearful Taozi by the shoulder and said that he could fulfill the boy's request on one condition. He agreed to leave the family if the protagonist's sister served him well. Jiang Mingyun was already choking on his own blood, but all his thoughts were occupied with what a vile scumbag this red-haired guy was. At this moment, the young man fell into a state of uncontrollable rage. Our hero understood from the very beginning that he was trying to balance on the brink of life and death only so that his family could live better. He remembered all his desperate battles with enemies who seemed impossible to defeat. Jiang Mingyun remembered that he had even survived a mine collapse, but now he was overcome with despair and thought that he still couldn't make his family happy. His thoughts were transported to a dark hall where there was a throne on which a stranger sat. The shadow, with a confident smile on its face, ordered the protagonist to stand up. The shadow sat proudly on its throne and told Jiang Mingyun to stand up again. The beaten guy obeyed her, and, gathering his last strength, stayed on his feet. Suddenly the protagonist's eyes turned black, and his gaze became piercing and dispassionate. This dark force gave the guy the strength to continue fighting the bandits and protecting his loved ones. The bullies noticed that he had strong bones, and the leaders suddenly felt a change in the enemy's magical aura. The guy with the bandage realized that the young man was just fooling around, pretending that he was in a lot of pain, because after such a beating, a normal person would definitely not get up. The enraged masked bandit decided to deal Jiang Mingyun such a blow that he would definitely never be able to get back on his feet. The protagonist didn't wait and immediately hit the attacker with his knee right in the chest. He believed that only the bandit himself had died. The gang members were angry that this guy could still respond to their attacks. The bandit with the bandage ordered his stupid comrades to immediately attack the guy because he was just fooling around and pretending to be weak. Someone hugged Jiang Mingyun and held him tightly, so he definitely didn't break away from joy. The one-eyed, enraged guy wanted to viciously hit the immobilized protagonist. He wanted to hit the guy right on the head and send him to hell, but it wasn't easy at all. The protagonist managed to avoid the dangerous attack without any problems, while the bandit's foot flew straight into the face of his ally. The surprised guy with the bandage didn't have time to react because he didn't understand how it happened. Jiang Mingyun deftly escaped from the bandit's grasp to deal with his impudent partner. He immediately hit the eyeless bandit in the leg, knocking him down. Then the guy attacked the bully who was holding him in suspense and not allowing him to move. Jiang Mingyun dug his fingers into the bandit's nose with all his might. The protagonist easily escaped his grasp and knocked the big guy off his feet. Taoji held her battered mother in her arms and watched in amazement as her brother fought the bandits. The gang leader highly praised the protagonist's impeccable fighting skills. Then he understood why his young master Tokugawa had been defeated by Jiang Mingyun. Despite our hero's very weak aura, he was able to easily destroy all of the red-haired bandits' allies. This guy's unequal fight with the hooligans really impressed their stocky leader. He took off his clothes because he told Jiang Mingyun that the battle was not over yet. Although he and Tokugawa were of the same rank, the bandit was not as attentive as his master. The protagonist asked if his opponent had heard that thieves die from excessive talkativeness. The bandit, threatening that this was the end for the boy, rushed into battle, but Jiang Mingyun continued to stand still. The red-haired, strong man began to strike quickly and without stopping, but our hero quickly dodged the collision with his opponent's hand. He noted that Jiang Mingyun was a very skilled fighter. Suddenly, the bandit decided to deliver a direct kick to the head, so that the guy would definitely not have time to dodge such a powerful attack. In the end, Jiang Mingyun was faster and delivered such a powerful counterattack that his opponent flew across the room and crashed into the wall. The bandit liked the young man's audacity and incredible strength, but he still intended to deal with him cruelly. He assumed his special form and remarked that it was a great honor for the protagonist that the enemy was using this ability. The strong man's entire body was covered with thick fur, and animal claws were visible on his fingers. His face became dog-like, and he explained that he now possessed the power of the real Uruk. Now the bandit became even stockier and looked like a real angry dog. He said that now their games were finally over, but the protagonist did not agree with this, and a strange object began to appear in his hands. After some time, Jiang Mingyun, holding a sword in his hands, announced that their game was just beginning. The werewolf smiled and showed his sharp teeth. He believed that the main character was a boy who simply pretended to be a demon, and did so even in matters of life and death. The bandit wanted to hit Jiang Mingyun, but he reacted perfectly and blocked the blow. As a result, the werewolf managed to distract the enemy's attention in this way, after which he quickly delivered a side kick. The guy didn't have time to react, so he couldn't stay on his feet and crashed into the wall. It seemed that our hero no longer felt any pain, but was determined to fight fiercely. The A-rank player rushed towards his prey, believing that this was not the end of their battle. At the last moment, the guy managed to deftly retreat, so that the bandit's hand only hit the wall. Before the werewolf could even comprehend what had happened, Jiang Mingyun was already behind him and preparing to counterattack. He grabbed the dog-faced bastard by the head and pressed his cruel face against the wall with all his might. The protagonist had already raised his blade to deliver the finishing blow to the enemy. The weapon flew into the air and caused a rather large cut on the enemy's skin. The werewolf realized that things were bad and tried to respond to the enemy's lightning attack. And finally, he succeeded, after which Jiang Mingyun received a very strong blow to the face. The protagonist did not expect such a strong response, so he fell again and flew away from his opponent. The bandit couldn't believe that this guy was still standing and remarked that he was difficult to defeat. The giant hoped that this guy wasn't going to bore him to death, and admitted that he had found the artifact in Jiang Mingyun's hands interesting from the start. But he believed that there was nothing he could do about the fact that the best equipment in the hands of nobody was just as useless. With a mischievous smile on his lips, our hero noted that turning into an animal really does lead to the appearance of animal brains. Jiang Mingyun invited his opponent to first look at his seemingly incredibly strong and perfect body. The bandit didn't understand what the young man meant, so he looked down to check himself. Only then did the enemy notice that our hero was still capable of inflicting a wound on him, but for him, it was only a small scratch. But then the bandit turned his gaze slightly to the side and saw that his hand was completely cut off. Only then did the werewolf feel the loss of a limb and screamed furiously. Meanwhile, Jiang Mingyun took off his sweater and announced that the warm-up was over. Now the protagonist was ready to begin a real, fierce fight with his seemingly invincible opponent. The events moved to another house, where someone was screaming and begging not to kill him. The man knelt down and promised to give his offender everything he wanted, and also promised to make a lot of money because today he became a player. The one who was going to kill him said that there was nothing to be afraid of. The stranger promised that now this man would be with God forever. He grabbed the victim by the face and, sobbing with fear, grabbed her by the sobs. Using magic, this guy mercilessly burned the player's face and called him a heretic. The strange magician believed that this would be an honor for this man, because now he could be useful to God. The young man held in his hands a photograph of his latest victim on the list. A confused Jiang Mingyun, who was about to end the religious fanatic's working day, looked at him from the photograph. The events returned to the protagonist's house, where his opponent could not understand how the loser managed to interrupt his game. The bandit was confident in his strength, so he was surprised how Jiang Mingyun was able to injure his flesh at lightning speed. By this time, the guy had already rushed towards his opponent. He was not going to wait any longer. He mockingly asked if an A-rank fighter could afford to be distracted during a fight. These ridicule angered the werewolf, and he began to shower Jiang Mingyun with insults. He hit the floor with all his might, causing it to simply shatter into pieces. The young man continued to irritate his opponent and noted that the showy attacks, although beautiful, were ineffective in practice. The werewolf's eyes filled with inhuman rage, and he was ready to tear our brave hero to pieces right there on the spot. Jiang Mingyun rushed past at lightning speed and mockingly asked his opponent for permission to overtake him. The bandit's body was already bleeding, but he continued to stand on his feet. The guy hit him several times, but none of the blows caused serious injuries to the opponent. Then the werewolf realized that the protagonist was using him as a toy and was simply mocking him. Rage was already filling the bandit's blood, so he was not going to give up. Without feeling the slightest pain, he wanted to attack Jiang Mingyun and finally deal with his enemy. It seemed that this was exactly what the protagonist expected, so he fearlessly declared that the game was finally over. The boy swung his sword in the air as the werewolf flew towards him. Then the bandit realized that this was definitely the end for him because he would not have time to escape from this guy's attack. Bright rays pierced the werewolf's stocky body, and he screamed in horror and pain. The protagonist's attack force was so powerful that it destroyed the family home. Jiang Mingyun stood over the lifeless body of this bastard, trying to catch his breath after such a fierce fight. The shadow that controlled this guy mockingly remarked that it seemed like his body had its limits too. She decided to return Jiang Mingyun's body for now, so that he wouldn't die too quickly. Eventually, the protagonist lost consciousness, and his sister became very scared for him. A strange religious fanatic watched from behind a tree and guessed he had missed a good show, but the atmosphere in the house remained the same. Under the mask, the boy had a disfigured mouth, and he noticed with a smile that Jiang Mingyun smelled of blood and God. He really wanted to taste our hero, but first he had to tell the bishop about him. At this moment, Jiang Mingyun's consciousness was in a strange place where there was nothing. His shadow appeared behind him and asked the boy's opinion about this battle. She asked if this guy liked such a powerful and invincible force. Shadow believed that these abilities were very helpful to the protagonist, but that wasn't even their full power. Jiang Mingyun noticed that the strange creature had frightened him with its muttering from the very beginning and inquired about its origin. The shadow then showed its face and explained that it was the main character. Suddenly, Jiang Mingyun took a deep breath and jumped up, waking up in bed. He looked around the unfamiliar room he was in. As it turned out, our hero was in the hospital, and at that moment there was a nurse with him. The guy immediately asked her with concern about his family. The nurse explained that the girl who brought Jiang Mingyun here was with her mother in room 3 to 12 and asked him to come there when he woke up. The main character ran to his family at the speed of a bullet, and a hospital employee asked him not to run, for which the guy apologized. He ran screaming into the room where his closest people were waiting for him. The out-of-breath boy saw that his sister was okay and asked about his aunt's condition. Taoji happily congratulated her brother, who had finally come to his senses, and said that her mother was fine. The doctor said that the woman needs to stay in the hospital under observation for another 2 days, and for now she is resting. Jiang Mingyun blamed himself for putting his family in danger and ending up in such a difficult situation. His sister tried to reassure him that everything was okay and was glad that at least they had survived, which could not be said about their home. The main character agreed with the girl and calmed down a little. After thinking about his sister's words for a while, the boy noticed something that worried him. Just a few seconds later, Jiang Mingyun realized that they no longer had a home and screamed in despair throughout the hospital. The protagonist asked if he and his rival had really destroyed the building during the fight. Taoji's mood worsened, and she irritably remarked that after her brother became a player, he not only put his family in danger, but also left them homeless, with no money left for treatment, so they might be kicked out of the hospital tomorrow. The boy was afraid to stay with his angry sister, so he decided to leave, rent an apartment, and pay for the treatment himself. Taozi stopped our hero because she brought him clothes from home. All of Jiang Mingyun's clothes were torn, so the girl suggested that he change in the bathroom and go about his business. The protagonist promised to replace his sister in caring for his aunt upon arrival, and Taoji asked him to rent an inexpensive apartment. As he left, the guy thought that such battles had hit the team hard and hoped that the resources from yesterday's dungeon had already been sold. He opened his account on his phone and saw that he had been paid 150,000 more. As it turned out, it was his comrades who decided to thank him for saving their lives. Jiang Mingyun was happy with such a useful gift, as he still had a debt of 3.5 million. Moreover, the boy couldn't believe that he had to deal with a bandit from the Tokugawa family, because all his memories were very vague. Suddenly, someone turned to look at our hero from behind his back, to which he reacted instantly and nervously due to recent events. In front of the guy stood a beautiful girl named Li Wen. She was the president of the Brave Guild and came to visit Jiang Mingyun. The man asked if they knew each other, because he no longer remembered many of the events of the previous day. Li Wen confirmed that they were not actually acquainted, but she wanted to talk to the protagonist, so she suggested moving to a quiet place. The beauty of the stranger captivated the protagonist, and he was ready to do anything for her. Jiang Mingyun took her to a bench outside, thinking it was a rather secluded place for a private conversation, and the girl found it funny. The protagonist decided to say everything directly because he believed that the guild leader decided to personally visit the weak player, not to propose a meeting, and certainly not to invite him to the guild. The boy seriously inquired about Li Wen's intentions and cautiously asked if Tokugawa had sent her. The girl disgustedly denied her connections to Tokugawa and noted that the protagonist was definitely no longer a weak player. Despite receiving an E-rank gaming license as a result of certification, this guy managed to defeat Tokugawa himself. Furthermore, Jiang Mingyun was able to kill a B-rank player sent by his rival, but only a few people knew about this, although Li Wen was confident that the entire city would soon learn of these achievements. The girl again spoke with irritation about the scoundrel Tokugawa, whom our hero had humiliated twice, and was sure that he would not simply accept his defeat. Meanwhile, Jiang Mingyun was carelessly eating the fruits the stranger brought him, which made her angry because she thought he wasn't listening to her at all. Li Wen continued her story about Tokugawa and noted that he relied on the influence of a corporation called Miracle that was involved in biological research. The protagonist, with his mouth full, became interested when he heard about the company. Meanwhile, several black cars pulled up to the hospital. Apparently, representatives of the upper classes were also present. He was a fair-haired, handsome man, and his assistant said that, according to information from the task force, the person they needed was hospitalized here yesterday. The stranger asked his assistant to take him to the right patient. At this moment, Jiang Mingyun was nervous because he didn't know whether the Miracle Corporation could do any harm to him. Li Wen explained that the company is studying monsters and improving player abilities, and the main character's special skills have attracted the attention of scientists. Suddenly the guy tensed up because the stranger knew about his character and could pose a danger. Jiang Mingyun angrily asked what this suspicious girl knew about him. She explained in detail that this guy was a warrior player, but he also knew how to use magic, and just by looking at his ID card in the course of the battle itself, one could draw some conclusions. The protagonist noticed that the girl knew a lot, so he couldn't understand what she wanted from him, and Li Wen only wanted Jiang Mingyun to join their guild. The guy asked again because he was surprised by such a proposal, and the girl repeated that she wanted our hero to join the Extreme Sports Guild. She promised to reward him for completing the dungeons and provide the family with new housing. Such conditions sufficiently satisfy the immediate needs of the protagonist, which is why he thought about it. The guy thought that this was the best option for him at the moment. But their conversation was suddenly interrupted by someone. A man who had recently arrived at the hospital and was looking for a specific patient greeted the protagonist and offered to first listen to his proposal and then make a choice. Lewin cautiously asked the strangers who they were and why they had come to see this man. The man explained that they belonged to the Miracle Organization, specifically the branch in Country Z, and that he had come today to deliver messages from that company to Mr. Jiang. Then the protagonist became nervous and thought that these were reinforcements from Tokugawa. Jiang Mingyun clenched his fists and remarked that if the outsiders wanted to create new troubles and fight, they should move to another place. The husband assured that they do not want to feud with the main character. He hoped to become friends with Jiang Mingyun and Li Wen so he could work for their organization, Miracle. The girl stated that the young man was already a member of her guild, so he could not even dream of getting our hero. The stranger tried to calm the clan leader and noted that he still did not agree to join the guild. Jiang Mingyun confirmed that he had indeed not responded yet, but was simply considering the proposals, and the fact that two groups approached him daily meant that our hero was an incredibly talented player. The husband advised the guy to listen to the organization's offer, since they knew about the difficult financial situation of the protagonist's family. But for Miracle, such sums were a trifle. After Jiang Mingyun joins them, the company promises to immediately pay off his large debt. Lewin pointed out that it was just money, and the guild could also make some quick money by raiding a few dungeons for rewards. The husband asked how many dungeons they would need to rob to get 3.5 million. The clan leader was incredibly surprised by what she heard, and Jiang Mingyun was embarrassed by her violent reaction. Meanwhile, a Miracle employee handed the man a small box with a strange key inside, and he explained that he was doing this to show the sincerity of his intentions. The company provided the boy's family with a luxury apartment that they could move into whenever they wanted. Jiang Mingyun thought he was being tricked because the box only contained a strange card, but the employee angrily explained that the doors in this mansion could not be opened with keys. The girl was sure that the protagonist would not show such feigned generosity and would not choose the organization, because the guild, although it did not offer such good conditions, could help solve all of the players' problems. The man noticed that the guy was already very happy and did not pay attention to the clan leader's words. Lewin was annoyed that Jiang Mingyun had changed his mind so quickly after losing his mind. However, she continued to urge the organization members to surrender because the company was working for the Dachuan family, and perhaps this guy was a sheep heading straight into the tiger's den. This man knew about this conflict and understood very well the dissatisfaction of Jiang Mingyun and the Dachuan family. In his opinion, it was just a minor quarrel, and if the protagonist joined Miracle, the man promised to settle this matter because he believed that the Dachuan family would not find this guy and cause him trouble. The young man understood that if he couldn't cope with Dachuan's family, he wouldn't be able to live peacefully in the city. But now this problem could be solved, albeit temporarily. Lewin couldn't believe that Jiang Mingyun would accept his competitor's offer, since the guild had also promised to provide protection to the player's family. In the end, the protagonist decided to accept the offer and join the Miracle organization.